Mr. Wood, sir, we are live.
We are live, a little delayed due to some technical difficulties, high level podcasting, YouTube streaming, Facebook streaming type of stuff.
You would think after 11 years of doing this, it would be easy breezy. Nope. It's my fault. See this little guys, look, if you ever see this and it's red, somebody type in the comments, hey dummy, you're muted. That's what happened. And man, I poor Will.
Well, now we know, right? We ruled out one thing.
15 minutes.
We can rule out one thing that can go wrong in the future, and eventually we'll rule them all out, right?
That's right.
There you go. So
before we get into today's show, as folks start jumping on, we got one folk jumping on. And I'd be remiss, Will, if I didn't tell people about the American Warrior Society. And Will is wearing one of our branded hoodies. It's actually my favorite. That thing is, it's really comfortable, is it not?
It is. It is super comfortable, and it's just, living here in Wisconsin, I like it because it's a little lighter weight versus some of the stuff I wear in the dead of winter up here, and it's perfect for I do the show from the lower level of our house. It's a walkout lower, so it's always cool down here, so it's perfect because it doesn't get me too hot, and it's just right. It's just perfect. And for most people who don't live in the far north, you'd be perfect all the way through the winter with this.
Yeah, I really like that one. I was, I thought we were just going to do the black classic line, because that's what people tend to wonder. But I think Will Parker had sent me a version of that one, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I dig that.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one.
So we got Guile on from the Philippines, and American Warrior Society. If you don't know, right now we have the gold coin for lifetime members, silver coin for yearly members, and of course the beautiful polished black coin for monthly members. And it's not just about a coin. That's absolutely, serialized coin is irrelevant. All it is a symbol of your dedication to train your body, your mind, and your spirit every single day to make you harder to kill.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a symbol of a pledge you make to yourself and to your family. Wouldn't you agree? That's really all it's
about. I couldn't agree more. And that's an ongoing commitment, right? A lot of guys are like, well, I'll go do a little shooting. Well, shooting's good. What about medical? It's like that meme that runs around, right? You carry how many spare bags, but not a tourniquet, right? So it's that commitment to you, your family, and I would even argue to society.
Yes. And then, here's another thing, like, you're far more likely to end up a damn diabetic than you are in a gunfight out in a Walmart parking lot. So it's also about taking care of your physical fitness.
Yes.
So anyway, it's a community that I'm proud to be a part of, and I think you are too, Will, or you certainly would have cut ways with me a long time ago.
Absolutely. And if I can digress for just 1 second, I just had an experience last week. My youngest and I were up in, as I call it, Garage Mahal, and working on we're restoring a 1980 Corvette at the moment. And the neighbor lady who is elderly, her daughter ran over in a panic. My mom just had an accident. Can you come help? And immediately, we ran over. We had our cell phones on us, of course, as you should. And immediately I was like, okay, we're going to run over there. I know I got a med bag in my truck, which is about halfway in between those two spots. Luckily, it wasn't anything that serious, but she had a little accident on her gator and had an ambulance out. But, having that medical experience, I was able to be the calming factor between, the injured lady and her daughter and feel like I could at least be a net positive to the situation. So, preparedness isn't just about the fight in the Walmart parking lot like we just saw recently was that New York? Where the guy went and stabbed, Traverse City, Michigan. Guy went and stabbed 11 people.
Yeah.
And, and that's another skill set you have to have. But any traffic accidents you can come up on, medical. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah,
and in our training vault, we've got Dr. Dan Olesnicki. He's a ER physician and SWAT doc, and he walks you through a whole host of things so to keep you and your family safer. Who got on this morning, Will?
See, Guile's on from the Philippines. Might not need this sweatshirt over there. Bruce is on, coin 481 from Michigan. Derek from North Carolina, Will Rhodes from Missouri. Good to see you, sir. Coin 2269. And Matt is on from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So good
Thank
to
you
see you
guys.
guys.
Like, comment, and share, please. Will once again has got a fantastic show for you, and I think we're going to start off with our fear and greed index.
As we always do, fear greed index there at the top from CNN Business. Actually, a pretty darn good little indicator. 64 on greed. It's been inching up here of late. To me, this market's feeling a little toppy in the short to medium term, say the next few months. That's more of a trader's mentality that I have on the short term of that. Really, until something breaks or a black swan event happens, I'm really not seeing much that's going to derail this market at this moment. Unemployment is kind of a oddball one right now, brother, because the obviously the last unemployment report came in not good, but I'm doing research for a possible show on how we may need to change our expectations for jobs reports based on demographic changes. The rule of thumb for a long, long time was we need to create at least 100, 150,000 jobs a month to keep up with new graduates and people entering the workforce. Well, fewer people are graduating and entering the workforce, whether that be high school or college, because there's fewer people.
Mm-hmm.
And so these numbers we've relied on for decades really may be changing. I emphasize the word may because I don't really have a solid opinion on that. That opinion's out there. I haven't really decided how I feel about that. I see Johnny King is on this morning from the great state of Kentucky.
Yeah, and old family friend Chad is on. Good morning, Chad. Hope you're
Awesome.
doing
Good to
blessed,
see you,
brother.
Chad.
So a moment ago you said you don't see the market's doing great. You don't see it changing anytime soon. I'm confused because I thought tariffs were supposed to destroy everything. What did I miss something?
No.
You mean the tariffs are working?
The tariffs are working. Now,
as well as a strategic tool that he's using to put Putin in his place by levying 50% sanctions on India. And you mean there's value to tariffs? I don't.
At this point, there are. Now, if it escalates into a full blown trade war, that could change. But realistically, I don't really see a trade war. Everybody needs access to the U.S. market.
Damn right.
Period. End.
Yes, exactly.
And that's really the big stick we carry now is that. Yeah. And
we've always carried it though.
We have
always carried it, and we just tossed it away.
Well, exactly. I mean, you can carry the metaphorically with self-defense. You can carry the big stick, a handgun. But if a society, a person is never willing to wield that big stick, what's the use of it?
Nothing.
Right. So, and I heard an interesting theory about the tariffs. If you go to Europe, they have the value-added tax, right?
Been there.
And it's 20% ish, depending on the country or the zone. From what I understand, I'm a little ignorant on the exact numbers. And nobody blinks at that because it's a tax, right? It's just a tax. And people try to make it akin to our sales tax, which it kind of is and kind of isn't. But any tax that if we tried to pass a value-added tax on the federal level here, that would have to go through Congress and then be signed by the president and then have to stand up to, I'm sure, some lawsuits that would make it to the Supreme Court and things like that. Essentially, Trump just put a value-added tax on everything coming into the country.
Yeah.
And by doing so, leveled that playing field because I know at this part I did research in Europe, they put the value-added tax on, say, Ford products that are going in. Ford, Chevy, GM, Chrysler, all of them. And then they use that value-added tax to subsidize their own auto manufacturers.
Yes.
Well, that's kind of what's happening here. And I'd be willing to bet that if we try to put in a value-added tax, Team Blue would be all for that. And Team Red would be
if it's got the word tax
it.
in it, they're all about it, buddy.
Yeah. And Team Red would be against it, right? So, but the tariff is essentially doing the same thing. Now that we're not using the revenue from the tariff to subsidize any particular manufacturer, but it does go into the federal coffers and is used there. So And we'll see how it shakes out long term. But I heard that argument. I thought it was an interesting take on it.
I think I've talked about this before on the show before. When I first started going to the UK, you could get the VAT tax back, whatever you paid. And it was the way I would assume to encourage tourism. The tourists come and don't worry about it. That 20% we're going to tap you. You're going to get it back if you fill out the forms and turn in your receipts. So, going over when I'm doing my cost analysis, what's this vacation going to cost us? I'm going to get back 20% of what I spent. And then they ended it, which is like, that kind of sucked. But
yeah,
these things they're excellent tools, man. I got to be honest with you. Johnny King is on. Will Parker, a good friend out there in beautiful Montana. Alan Kelly, occupied Virginia, coin number 1571. Mark is on from Australia. Tony is on. John Shriver's on from Yukon, Oklahoma. Looks like we got the band put back together this morning, Will.
Yeah, we do. It's like the Blues Brothers getting the band back together.
That's right.
So, all right. So if we go back to the previous slide for just a second there, I had to put the headline on this slide for space considerations. This is from CNN Business just a few days ago, Friday, as a matter of fact. Why inflation's got you down, even if it's not really happening yet. Now, I, for the most part, like CNN Business. All the business channels, whether it be Fox, CNN, they're pretty down the middle because they have to be. These people are using this as advice on their money. And if you screw up their money, they're not going to follow you. But both sides, whether it be Fox or CNN, you'll see little bends like this. And so it's just something to be aware of, guys. So since you brought up tariffs, which is, it segues in this perfectly, they say tariffs are going to cause inflation. Well, let's just say inflation, true inflation, is zero for just a moment. Let's just isolate tariffs out. And let's say we put in a 12% tariff in January of 2025. And so it's effective January 2025. And so we see a 12% increase in all prices in January of 2025. And then it stays stable and other inflation stays at zero, just for argument's sake. Well, that's 12% inflation in 1 month. If you annualize that, that's 144% annually, and people freak out. But then if inflation stays 0% each month, the remainder of 2025, was that inflation or a price shock? And this is an argument that's going on right now in financial circles is this actually inflation? It is from one standpoint because prices go up, but it's not an ongoing monetary thing. And so this is one thing that the market and everybody's trying to wrap their heads around right now. Now, out here, retail consumer, which I am, which you are, prices go up. We don't really care so much what label you want to put on it. It hurts, right? So if you will, to use Rush Limbaugh's term, your low information voter really doesn't know, understand, or care about the difference. They just know they're getting squeezed, right?
Right.
So the end result for us as market participants is kind of the same. The consumer is going to get squeezed by higher prices. That's going to affect things down line. So it's kind of an academic argument, but it's also playing into what old J-Dog is doing over at the Fed, because he has to try to figure this out, to figure out monetary policy to get it right. And it's making his job more complicated. So
yeah,
we'll see what he's able to shake out of that.
Yeah, Brian is on, but they're in Northern Texas. I've put a link in here to the White House where they have a list of all the companies that are reshoring back to the United States because of the Trump's tariffs. Now, I've also read somewhere else that the average American household is going to see about a $1,300-ish increase due to Trump's tariffs a year. So let's call that, a tariff tax, if you will, on each household, $1,300. But if we get all the reshoring that I hope comes back here, then I think it will be worth it in the long term. And that's what we've always talked about. You may see inflation short term, which so far hasn't been that big of a factor, but I think long term, it's what's best for the country, in my opinion.
I think the reshoring, the second and third order effects of this are good for the country. The short-term pain, and by that I mean, say, 0 to 5 years, may be determined more by what happens with the employment picture. If we do see employment dropping off, because there's plenty of signals out there saying we are late cycle in this bull market right now. If we see employment drop off, and ties into what we're talking about the rest of the day today, is if we see employment drop off, then suddenly these higher prices hurt a lot more.
Well,
And
what's going to
then,
happen? I mean, here's the thing. You and I were talking about AI before we got on the
Mhm.
show, Will, and AI is going to smoke a lot of white collar jobs,
oh yeah,
smoke them. So,
yep,
I mean, when we start talking about employment, I would say look at the landscape to shift a little bit. Now, there's always going to
mhm,
be need for people that understand machine learning and can get the most out of prompting AI to do these
mhm.
things. But I think we're going to see people that thought they were going to be white collar perhaps go a little bit more blue collar route. What do you think?
I couldn't agree more. Um, there, I'm still in my baby step stage of using Chat GPT, but this background right here and some other graphics we're going to use today, I just want to Chat GPT and said, create me an image and put in these things I wanted, and boom, it's done. So graphic design
And
right
that
there.
that I
Yeah.
remember the day when Mike Siegler and I had our first training company back in the 90s, and I had to go sit down with a graphic artist in downtown Knoxville and get them to draw us a thing. And it cost me, I don't know, a couple $100 back in the 90s. And that was some
Yeah.
significant money just to get a little logo.
Yep.
And AI created that in
About
a,
2.5 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah. It churns on it for a while, but
yeah.
I went in there, one of my cars, I went in and said, give me an image of this car, these colors, with this in the background. And it took it about 7 minutes, but it created exactly the image I said. And then I said, make this tweak to it. And it took about another minute and tweak the image. And that's the background of my computer right now.
Yeah. Tony says, and robotics will hurt blue collar manufacturing jobs. Well,
Yes.
there's a reason for that. And when I was a Marine recruiter, this guy came in the office to get some stickers. He's a former Marine. I'm like, hey, sir, what are you doing in town? He's like, I'm down here to buy some robotics. He's like, I'm as a guy that has to run a factory, I'm sick of it. The these robots don't ask for longer
Hmm.
breaks. They don't screw around in the parking lot.
Yeah.
It's our own fault.
Yeah. Well, and we're humans. We always want more, 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 right? And there's a reason there's a kiosk at McDonald's now. You want 15
Yeah.
bucks an hour? That's fine. And when my wife and I had our business, we couldn't eliminate humans in that way because it's more of a customer service oriented business. However, at one point, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, we invested a bunch of money in a software and over time eliminated about 8% of the workforce. And when I say over a period of time, it's like 90 to 120 days and never looked back. So that's the way thing. And I can remember growing up in the 70s and 80s in farm implement country, Moline, Illinois, home of John Deere. And when robotics came on, yeah, it hurt.
Yeah, I was with my grandfather. He was in produce, so we were at this produce place, and these guys were stacking peaches and rolling them out on dollies to the tractor trailers. And this would have been in the early 70s. And these guys were bitching. It's hot, and mosquitoes, and it's back breaking their back. And this one old man who's doing the same job is like, you need to shut your mouth or they're going to replace all of us.
Hmm.
Sure enough, a couple of years later, I go back down there with my grandfather, and there is nobody rolling the hand trucks. It's
Yep.
all automated right out to your
Yep.
truck.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well,
Machines don't call in sick. They don't ask for raises. They don't, yeah, go down the laundry list, right?
yeah,
So from that same article, and this is one of the things that happened with Trump tariffs 1.0 and has been happening with Trump tariffs 2.0. Businesses have been eating the tariffs. That's starting to change, and this has been in in people's expectations for a while. So costs were sharply on the rise for producers and manufacturers in July. The PPI report. And then the argument is that those higher prices to producers, who are the ones who initially pay the tariffs, will filter down. Well, consumers, as we've been talking about, are getting squeezed. So businesses have been scared to pass those on in full effect. Well, eventually they're going to have to, right? They can't just eat pick your number 10, 12, 15%, depending on the country forever, right? Their margins just won't allow that. But they're waiting for somebody to blink. And it's starting to happen. And it's not going to go from 0 to 15. it'll creep up over time. So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Will, to me, this is why we saw there's a whole lot of reasons. I'm not saying this is the variable. I'm saying this is one of the variables why price of eggs went. You can't fake a box of eggs necessarily.
Right.
You got to have 12 eggs. There's a fixed price. It goes up. Same with milk and some of these other things. But when it comes to the size of a McGriddle is getting really small in order to maintain that same price point. So when they can do shrinkflation to eat the cost, I think that's what they're doing, don't you?
That's a really good point. I hadn't actually thought about that, but yeah, we're gonna see stuff like that, and that may cause that dichotomy between if we look at egg inflation versus I don't know, chips, right? Because they can keep the bag the same size and just put more air in there, right? So that's a really good point, brother, because that's where we may see that. So as we look at in CPI reports going forward, let's try to parse out, because eggs are broken out in there versus other things. So I think that's an excellent point. Let's look at the things that are more fixed. They can't play shrinkflation games with. That's an awesome observation. So this article goes on to talk about the stuff we already talked about, and down there is this inflation? I was referring to inflation versus the price shock. To the consumer, it's the same thing, but as we dig into it, as a little more astute market observers, we need to be able to say, okay, well, which is it? Because long term, it makes a difference. If it's a price shock, it's a one-time event, and short term, the market may freak out, but we can take advantage of those freakouts, right? So we need to be able to parse out what is what a little bit more. So, delving into the meat of today's show, active versus passive investing. This one is another AI generated image. I said, generate me an image of active versus passive investing, and in about a minute and a half, it had this. So
incredible.
It is. It really is. So, active versus passive investing. Active investing would be your guy on the left playing chess. He's looking at balance sheets and cash flows and what's the market look like. What we normally think of as a fund manager, if you will. Okay.
This is really the Rich Brown, Will Wood dichotomy here.
Yeah, it really is. And we're gonna dig into that a little bit. And the passive side is really, the last 20 years ish trounced the active side for the most part. No two ways about it. Okay. And the passive side is you buy your S&P 500 fund and chill.
Yep.
Okay. But anything that's good can also turn bad. I'm not saying that's going to happen this week, this month, this year, but when it turns, the same things that have made passive work really well are going to make it really bad at some point. Yeah. And we just want to be aware of that. I'm not saying it's imminent. I'm not saying get out of your S&P 500 fund, but we're going to dig into what the downfalls are and maybe what to look for here. Okay. So the benefits and drawbacks of passive investing. This is from Investopedia. I forgot to put their little logo on there, so apologies to them. Don't sue us. Let's talk about the passive one up top. You mind reading off that top one for me, brother?
Absolutely. Let me make it bigger so these old eyes can see. Lower fees. Relying on rigid formulas to pick securities eliminates costly research, so index funds tend to be less expensive to operate than actively managed funds. Their portfolio building formulas are based on the indexes they use as their benchmarks.
Okay. The 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth word there is the key: rigid. There is no choice on what they do. If they're buying the S&P, if it's an S&P 500 fund, they buy the S&P 500. And we're going to get into how the S&P 500 is built a little bit today, and why it's been working, and why it's going to be its eventual Achilles heel. Okay. And I'm going to get into my theory on when that could change. It's not a timeline, just when we start seeing certain things happen in the market, it'll be worse for the passive investor than the active one. Okay. How about, you mind reading off that bottom one for me, brother?
Yes, sir. Active investing, benefits and drawbacks. Poor track record. The data shows that very few actively managed portfolios consistently beat their passive benchmarks year after year, especially after taxes and fees are accounted for. Indeed, over medium to long time frames, only a handful of actively managed mutual funds surpass their benchmark index.
And that is 100% true in my personal experience.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's some, in fairness to the active managers, there's some limitations put on them based on risk factors that really makes it impossible for them to beat the market, beat their benchmark, the passive benchmark. Um, and those times may be coming to an end here as we go. Um, but again, basically until we start seeing these things, not financial advice, buy the index. If you don't want to be in there
Yeah.
really actively getting after stuff, just buy the index. But this is it's going to change. Same way it changed. There was a time there was no S&P 500 fund,
Mhm.
and all it was active managers, right? So let's dig into a little bit of how things happen here. Okay.
Dr. Gordon Botson's on. Good morning, Dr.
Ooh,
Botson.
good to see you, sir. Hey, what Alan Kelly have to say there? I missed
Alan
that.
said some of the technical schools / community colleges are seeing a slight increase in enrollment in the trades. I hope this will be an increasing trend. These may be the new high-end blue collar jobs. I'm telling you, if you're a little bit smart, you show up on time and do good work and you take care of what you're doing and you have a little bit of business acumen, you will be a multimillionaire
Yes.
in the freaking blue collar trades. I'm telling you right now, any job that the average American does not want to do is a golden opportunity. It's your ticket
Yes.
to the big leagues.
Well, and I'll say I have a friend of mine who runs a handyman business, does really good work across a wide spectrum of things. He's like running people off with a stick.
Mhm.
I mean, he's so busy. I mean, you never want to say no, I don't want to come look at your project, because then that really ticks people off. But he'll go throw quotes out there as his words, and plenty of other people are using this. Basically they put FU quotes on it,
Mhm.
and people go, okay, and they pay it because
Yeah.
there's just no choice. Um, and let's face it, for decades, we've told people, no, don't learn to do that. Get a college degree, hire somebody to do that other one.
Yeah.
And, it's darn good money.
Yeah.
I'm a dedicated DIYer, and I've totaled up what I've saved so far, and it is a lot of money. So most of it's going to go into my eventual back surgery, but hey, that's a different discussion. So what's Mark say there?
Mark says Australia charges me goods and services tax on everything that I buy from America. As your prices go up, the GST Australia collects goes up. When the export country complains about tariffs, they behave like hypocrites.
Yep.
And speaking of,
Hypocrisy.
my contractor has been blowing me up, so I'm gonna step off the stage for just a minute and let
Yeah,
you
no sweat.
continue on with the show,
Yep,
my
no
brother.
problem. All right, guys. So a cap weighted index. Cap means capitalization. So that is the capitalization of a stock is the price of the stock multiplied by the number of shares outstanding. So if you have a $1 share price and 1,000,000 shares open, then your capitalization is $1 million. Okay, so we can see how you get a higher share price, say like Nvidia, 180-ish a share right now, times however many millions of shares outstanding. That's bigger than, say, I don't know, one of the casinos in Vegas that has very few shares outstanding, is trading at a couple dollars a share. Okay, so the way the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq 100 is organized is here on the left, cap weighted there, and rankings 1 through 10. Number 1 is the biggest stock in there by capitalization weight. So, and then number 2, 3, 4, 5, on all the way down in the case of the S&P 500, all the way down to number 500. We're going to dig into that here in just a little bit. So, let's say new money comes into an S&P 500 fund. Let's just say that's the cap weighted one we're talking about here. Well, 23%, let's say somebody invests $10,000. 23% of that, $2,300 of that goes into that number 1 ranked stock. The number 2 gets 19%, and on down all the way until you get to number 500, say for the S&P 500. Okay. Well, this is in comparison to an equal weight index. And you can go out there and find the equal weight S&P 500, where that fund puts an equal amount of money in all 500 stocks in the S&P 500. As we see there on the right, they would then put, in this case for our 10 stock index, would put 10% of that money into each of these 10 stocks. So, if a guy went and invested $10,000 into an equal weight portfolio like this, each one would get $1,000 into it. Well, but what if number one is performing better, right? Well, their cap weight goes up. So therefore, that index would go up. In both cases, it would go up more with the cap weighted one because it's weighted higher. Okay. Whereas on the equal weight one, we don't see that kind of change. Well, this kind of rigs the system that as long as more money is coming in on a cap weighted side, capitalization weighted index like the S&P 500, as long as more money is coming in, it's rigged to go higher. And I say rigged with a little bit of air quotes because nobody's rigging it. It's just the way it's constructed. So let's say, your number one stock there is just called NVIDIA. Okay. Well, if their share price goes up and more people put money in through automatic investing in their 401k, well, that fund manager is going to go buy the S&P 500 fund if that's where you say to put your money. They just go in and buy each one of these by ranking, by percentage, with no thought to is this a good value? Is this stock worth it at this price? Goes back to our previous slide where it's the rigid formula. The fund manager has no choice. In fact, there probably isn't even a fund manager. It's all done now through computers, AI, whatever they're using. There is no thought process that goes into this at all. So there's no price sensitivity here. There's no analytics that go on. As long as more money comes in, those stock prices are going to go up. And we saw this during the tariff, as I'm starting to call it now, the tariff tantrum in April. Smart money, if you will, institutional money sold out of a lot of the market. Retail kept putting money in. Well, why was that? Well, first, we've been well trained to buy the dip. So when the market dipped, people took money off the sidelines and put it in the market. Also, as the employment picture is very strong right now, people are continually putting money into their 401ks and getting their employer's match, which is an awesome thing. But that automatic investment into the S&P 500 kept piling money into this. And it was the retail investor, the dumb money, if you will, that kept piling money in post the tariff announcements. And that's what brought the market back up. And the smart money, and I say that with air quotes here, got caught wrong twice. They sold off and the market went down. And then as it's starting to come back up, they bought back in. They would have made more money just staying in. That's not always the case, but it sure was this time. So the institutional money got caught off sides. Okay. So this also works against us at times as well. So here's a chart of I'm going to make this larger so my old eyes can see it here. So this is the S&P 500, your blue line, and this is year to date for 2025. You'll see the S&P 500 is up 10%, 10.06%. RSP, that's your equal weight S&P 500 fund. So each stock is 1/500th of the fund instead of being cap weighted, which we're going to dig into a little bit more on some specific numbers on that coming up here shortly. You'll see the equal weight is only up 6.38%. So let's use round numbers here and say the cap weighted is up 10%. The equal weight's up 6%. Well, great. Let's use the cap weight, right? Well, it works great until it doesn't. If we look at 2022 here, this is calendar year 2022, and your blue line there is your S&P 500 cap weighted, your traditional S&P 500. That was down called 18% on the year for 2022. Your equal weight was only down 12% because when the market's going up, more money pours into those higher cap weighted stocks within it, and that drives that up. That gets individual guys like me to go, hey, I'm going to buy some more NVIDIA. Well, the NVIDIA goes up, or what are your number two, Microsoft, Google, whatever it is at the top end of that that list for the S&P 500 drives that up. That gets more passive people to buy the index. They buy the index, that drives it up. More guys like me buy those individual stocks. It becomes that self-licking ice cream cone. Well, it runs the other way on the way down, because now when those stocks go down more, it's the exact same thing in reverse, guys. More people are selling off their Nvidia, their Google. As an individual investor like myself, that drives other people to sell off the index. And so the same thing that works great on the way up hurts more on the way down. All right. So this is 2022 was a relatively benign example of this. And we haven't really experienced huge market drawdown since the passive investing really took over. We saw some of it with a housing crisis, but we haven't seen a huge move down on this. So let's dig a little bit into how the S&P 500 is built here. This is, I found a list here of all holdings the S&P 500. Okay. And you'll note here where I drew my red line there just below Tesla. If you add up all those percentages of the portfolio weight, starting with NVIDIA, Microsoft, Apple, on down the line through Tesla, that's your top 9 right there. They're all tech stocks. But I thought when I bought an index, I was well diversified. Well, if you math that out, 36.69% of the money you put in S&P 500 goes into tech stocks. That's not really that well diversified, in my opinion, guys. Now, there's other ways to do diversification within this, and we're going to talk about that here shortly. But this is, people think, well, I bought the S&P 500, it's 500 companies. Yeah, but there's a high concentration at the top end of this list. So this is something to be very aware of as the market moves around. And let's just take a look here over on the market value side of this. So you take NVIDIA, top line, it's 8.07% of the market weight. Look at the market value of that. 53, we use round numbers here, $53 billion in market value. So that's your price, share price times shares held, 293 million shares there. All right. So $53 billion. Let's just go down to Home Depot all the way at the bottom. That's what, less than 10% of that. And it's probably what, number 17, 18, somewhere in there on this list. So you can see how it falls dramatically, much less before we get out to number 500. Okay. So let's take, just as a quick refresher here, the top 9 stocks are basically 37% of the S&P 500, right? Well, let's look at the bottom end. All right. Here's your bottom 40 stocks. And I recognize a lot of these names, but some of them I have no clue who they are. Lamb Weston Holdings, I don't have a clue who that is. But if you buy the S&P 500, 0.01% of your money goes into them. Yeah, it's insignificant amount of money of your portfolio. But let's look how the cap weighting works here. Your bottom 40 stocks are 1.84% of the money you put in. Well, this skews things. So this is showing us how this really skews this. If we go back, we have to come all the way down here to, let's say, Google here. 1.74% of the S&P 500 is Google. That is essentially the same as the bottom 40 put together, right? So you could have a huge move in, let's just say, Molina Healthcare, whoever they are. That could go up. That could double. Let's say it doubles in a day. You're going to see a 0.02% move in your money. Inconsequential, right? But if we go back here, and this is where we see the danger happening at, guys, NVIDIA, that's 8% of your portfolio. So let's say you got $100,000 in an S&P 500 fund. That means $8,070 of that is NVIDIA. That goes down 10% in a day, which has happened. You're going to feel that. Then that drives an individual guy like me. If NVIDIA goes down, and I think it's going to go down more, I'm going to sell out of that. That's going to affect you, right? So this is what we saw a while back when the carry trade fell apart. People were borrowing money in yen and then purchasing individual stocks. So they borrowed cheap and then bought stocks that were going up faster than their rate of interest on those those same shares. This is where this concentration at the top, when things start turning down and nobody wants to own these, at some point it will happen. It has not happened yet. So this is a forward looking type thing we're looking at here, guys. When eventually people don't want to, own these shares anymore of, say, these top 9 or even top 20, you'll see an outsized decrease in the index versus individual share prices. And that's how we get this one here, where the cap weighted, the blue line here, went down 18% in calendar year 22 versus the equal weight went down 12%. All right. So, right now, honestly, not financial advice. I just own the cap weight. This is where we were talking about earlier, where it's kind of rigged, right? So as long as new money is flowing into the market and people are buying passive funds, which are generally, for most places, your only choice inside of a 401k. And we all want to invest in our 401k if we get a company match, because that's free money, right? So you say, I put it in, put the money into a 60-40 fund, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Well, of that 60% that go in the stock, let's say half of it goes into an S&P 500 fund. This is how it's going to get thrown out there. So as long as that new money is coming in, this is going to keep working. Where it stops working is if people start pulling money out. And one of the things we're waiting to see what happens is, as the boomers retire and they're either need to take the money out to have money to live on in retirement, or they're required to through the required minimum distributions, what's going to happen here? And the answer is we don't know. Because when they pull that money out, if they don't need all that money, they could just put it right back into a taxable account and buy back into the same stuff. We really don't know at this point. Something we have to watch as the boomers age out and eventually pass on and leave that money to younger generations. Are they going to keep that money in the market, or are they going to go out and spend mom and dad's money on toys? So we'll see what happens with it. I see you're on there, Gerald. Good morning. And Mark is on. No worries, brother. Catch it later. And if you got any questions, throw it up in the coin members area. All right, let's see here. As I was bouncing back and forth, I lost my place. Okay, so is this a threat to you? Well, yes, comma, when? We don't know. Okay, so this market concentration, all that money flowing into fewer stocks at the top. I mean, you could get into a situation where this is out there. This wouldn't realistically happen, but mathematically it could happen. You could end up with one stock get so big, say Nvidia, that it he's back. Don't nobody talk about him anymore.
Yeah. Sorry, guys.
So,
but see, I'm the anti-DIYer, so I got, which means I'm at the mercy of my contractors. When they call, I got to jump.
Yep. So. Yep. No worries, brother. Hey, I'm going to catch up on a couple of things. I want to hear your thoughts on this. So we're going to go back here just a little bit.
Look at that. 2 people jumped off and I got back. What does that tell you, Will? You're the star of the show, pal.
Did you use your personality again? Is that what happened?
That's what happened. I'm sorry.
All right. So we're going to review real quickly here. Okay. Okay. So a cap weighted fund is your rankings here 1 through 10. You can look on the cap weighted side. Capitalization is shares outstanding times share price equals the market capitalization. And you can see where in a cap weighted fund like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, the number 1 ranking stock, whatever name of that company might be, gets, in this case, I made this up, 23% of the cash going in, where the number 10 gets 1%. So Rich Brown invests $10,000 into this fund. As the fund manager, actually, I probably won't even touch it, like we talked about, guys. $2,300 of that $10,000 is going into that number 1 ranking stock.
And the number 1's probably NVIDIA, right?
Yeah, it is in the S&P 500. It is. Yeah. And I'm guessing it is in the NASDAQ too. Honestly, I didn't look. And your number 10 is getting 1%. But nobody's looking at it going, hold on a second. Which one's really the best deal? Which one has the best future? Doesn't matter on the cap weighted. On the other side, brother, we talked about the an equal weight index, which is what people envision when they hear S&P 500. What most people envision is an equal weighting where every company gets an equal amount of that money. You put $10,000 in, $1,000 goes in each one. There is an equal weight S&P 500 we're going to look at real quick to bring you up to speed, but most people don't even know it exists. They think the S&P 500 is what they envision is that equal weight, and that is not the case.
I like the idea of cap weighted myself.
It works. It works until it doesn't.
Exactly. And I would imagine that most of the S&P is tech stocks. So instead of being diversified, you were in a stovepipe.
Bingo. People think, oh, I own 500 stocks. I'm diversified.
No, you're not.
Go to the next slide here, brother. Let's do a little digging.
Ooh, what am I doing?
Look at it here. So this is 2025 year to date. SPY, S&P 500 funds up about 10% year to date. RSP, that's your equal weight S&P 500 fund. That's up 6% year to date. So to your point, yeah, I like cap weighted. Right? Totally.
Yeah, that's 4%. That's pretty significant.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to look at a percentage, it's 75% better return, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Why wouldn't we do this? Well, there's a downfall too, because if we go to the next slide, here's calendar year 2022. There's a 50% greater loss for your cap weighted.
And that was during the year 2022, huh?
Yep. This is calendar year 2022 we're talking about here.
What the hell happened there?
That was when the whole market went down. So what happens is it accelerates downward. Because like we talked about, guys like me who are a little more active will be like, NVIDIA is going up. I'm going to buy some more NVIDIA, right? Well, that drives the whole market up, right? The whole S&P 500 goes up. So a passive guy like you goes, hey, I'm going to buy more of the S&P 500, right? So you buy more of that. By definition, that then drives NVIDIA up. That makes me buy more NVIDIA.
Right.
Well, it works the same way on the way down. Okay. And you don't even necessarily on the passive side, I might sell NVIDIA. I might even short NVIDIA. All you have to do is not put more money in while I'm doing that.
And just to be clear, on the way down, there's nothing to stop the landslide because it is stuck at cap weighted.
Yes.
Is that right?
It's the way the index is constructed. Go back to that definition. The key word was rigid.
Yeah.
There's no flexibility there.
There's no fund manager to jump in and go, ooh.
Perfect.
Now, if NVIDIA, if they find out tomorrow and NVIDIA's been cooked the books, I don't know. I'm not saying they are, don't sue us.
Right.
But what I'm saying is something happened and NVIDIA suddenly fell in the ranking from 1 to 5. It would readjust everything automatically. Is that correct?
Let's go to the next slide and let's talk about that example. I remember that's the next slide. Yep. Here's your rankings for the S&P 500. And to your earlier point, yes, the top 9 stocks are tech stocks in the S&P 500.
9 out of 10.
9. The top 9, and look at the percentage. 37% of the whole fund is in 9 stocks. Is that diversified?
No, not even close.
So you can get somebody who's like, I'm diversified. I own a fund that has 500 different companies. You might as well just bought a tech fund, right? So to your point, let's just say NVIDIA, don't sue us, guys. Let's just say it goes to 0 tomorrow, right? Your S&P 500 fund, if you look at the percentage portfolio weight there, it's 8.07%, right? So if NVIDIA goes to 0, your S&P 500 fund's going down 8.07% if everything else stays equal, which it would not, of course.
Well, hell no.
Right, but let's just say that happened in a vacuum. Your S&P 500 fund's going down 8%, and everything will move up a rank, and they'll add whatever company in at the bottom. Okay, but here's the thing, guys, and I think it was the Google second, right above Tesla there. The Class C is 1.74% of the S&P 500. Okay, so Rich Brown puts $10,000 into an S&P 500 fund through your 401k. They're going to go buy $807 of NVIDIA shares. They don't care what the price is. It's rigid. They don't look, and there's no fund manager going, yeah, but NVIDIA's had a heck of a run. I think they're overpriced. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I would imagine long-term Meta, Apple, Microsoft, somebody's going to jump on that market share, semiconductor, AI, whatever NVIDIA does. It's kind of a black box in some ways. But in the short term, and I would venture a guess that a lot of these other tech stocks are invested in NVIDIA as well. So they're going to take a hit as well. I mean, to
Yep,
your point, it's just not diversified.
exactly. So let's this Google, the Alphabet Class C is 1.74% of the whole portfolio, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Go to the next slide.
Okay.
The bottom 40 is 1.84%. This is the bottom 40 stocks in the S&P 500. And there's no shenanigans here, guys. This is the way it's built. It's all transparent. It's cap weighted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look at Caesars Entertainment, second from the bottom, 0.01%.
Mm-hmm.
So you put $10,000 in there and $100 is going to go into this, right? So you could have Molina Healthcare, whatever it is up there. It could double in a day.
It wouldn't mean shit to your portfolio.
Not a thing. It could also go to zero in a day. Wouldn't mean anything.
Exactly.
Right? So the diversification that a lot of people think they're getting from an S&P 500 fund, it really isn't there.
Yeah.
Now we talked about, well, you were taking care of your business there. There's other ways to diversify. You put 20% of your money, not financial advice, 20% of your money in an S&P 500 fund, and you put some in the NASDAQ fund, and you put some over here and some over there. But the NASDAQ, by definition, is tech. Well, actually, it's called growth, but it's really even more concentrated in tech because that's where the growth is, right? Mm-hmm. So people say, well, I've got 30% of my money in the S&P 500 and 30% of my money in the NASDAQ. You basically own the same stocks with any significant amount of your portfolio. So it's very concentrated in tech. And so if tech stumbles like it did in 2022, then we get that 18% down year in a diversified S&P 500 fund. So this is the danger that happens eventually when the market really stumbles. The downturn will be greater than with active investing, which we're going to dig into a little bit. I'm not really advocating for active investing for most people. Just be aware of it. Okay.
No.
And I mean that both from a standpoint of you actively investing it or also getting a fund that actively invests it, because there's some things that hold the active fund manager back.
Yeah. I don't recommend swimming with sharks. And, if you're going to be an active trader, get ready to get your ass handed to you, a few months out of the year and just, but if you can weather those storms, good for you.
Yeah.
If you enjoy the dopamine hit of constantly feeling like you're standing on the edge of a cliff, I don't personally. I want to set it and forget it. So this passive.
Well, even if you try and set it and forget it through, say you buy a growth fund, well, that's an actively invested fund.
Yes,
because
I have some of those.
Some fund manager is out there picking which stocks to put you into, right? Yep. So that is actively invested. Active doesn't necessarily mean you do it yourself. It means it's basically an active fund is not a passive fund.
Yeah.
And passive would be we buy the S&P 500 or we buy the NASDAQ or we buy some index. Okay.
That's a good point, man. I tend to forget that. You know what I mean? That I'm kind of inactive as well because I do have some funds that are actively managed. Yeah.
So you have actively managed fund, and there's some things holding those fund managers back. Okay, we're going to talk about those here in a few minutes. Yeah. So if you go to the next one,
their prospectus outlines the rules of the road, right?
Absolutely. And if you want to fall asleep real fast, start reading a prospectus. If you got insomnia, man, that's a great way to take care of it.
Okay. That'll cure it quick.
Oh my gosh. So is this a threat to us? This passive investing S&P 500, is this a threat to us? Well, no, until, okay. But market concentration, which is what we have here. Okay. When you got, you buy an S&P 500 and the top 9 are all tech, and the other one's Berkshire Hathaway is number 10. Okay. Which has very little tech, but he does have a lot of Apple still. Okay. But it's kind of akin to putting all your eggs in one basket. Essentially, half your money is tied up in probably about 15 stocks in an S&P 500 fund. So this is not diversification, in my opinion. Okay. But they give the illusion of diversification. Okay. And people say, well, I'm diversified because there's 500 companies in this fund. Yeah. You got $1 million in there. 10,000 of it is in, whatever that, because it's Caesars, right? Really? I mean, it's not diversification, in my opinion. Now, there's ways, like we talked about, the diversification can happen. Like I'm guessing you have an S&P 500 fund, maybe a NASDAQ fund, then you have a growth fund, right? And then you have some bond funds in there. So that diversification can still happen, but don't count on an individual index fund to give you that diversification because it
Mhm.
won't. There's also vehicles out there, your target date funds, like your retire 2030 fund, which I have some money in. And that there, it's kind of active and passive because a manager is in there saying we're going to put this much in an S&P 500 fund and this much in a bond fund and this much here and there. So they're active managers buying passive funds inside of that, and then they're adjusting that as that year comes on, your retirement year, 2030, 2035. And then they're adjusting that risk profile into more bonds as you get closer to that target date. So there's a mix in there as well.
And you were talking about Berkshire Hathaway. If anybody wants to get me a Christmas gift this year, just one stock of Berkshire Hathaway would be a really lovely Christmas gift. You can just throw it in my stocking.
Yeah, yeah. We'll put the address up later.
It's it's trading over $700,000 a share right now.
Yeah, that's for the A shares. The B shares are
Yeah.
are much more affordable.
$400, I would imagine.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, is this a threat to you? Yeah, sort of. Eventually, I'll put it that way. Eventually, it is going to be. And when is that going to happen? Whenever the market turns, and it is when, not if.
Yeah, exactly right.
So let's talk about what happens here with active versus passive. Before I go there, you're going to say something, brother?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Mark Hamilton says, morning, guys. I'll have to catch you in the replay. Busy working on a file up in Ontario, Canada. Gerald is on coin number 952 in Oregon. And Alan Kelly says, I vote most will buy toys. The younger generation doesn't look into the future.
We had delved into what's going to happen when the boomers are passing away and what their kids are going to do with those funds. Are they going to buy toys? Or are they going to reinvest it in the market? Because we don't know what's going to happen there. If it gets reinvested in the market, kind of a big nothing burger. If it gets spent on toys, going to help the economy, but the stock market might not do so good directly as that money's taken out. So we'll see what happens. So let's talk about how you think about things, Rich, and how I think about things. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to be the passive investor guy here. Okay. You're the passive. Exactly. You're going to be the passive fund manager. I'm going to be the active fund manager. Okay. Mm-hmm. So somebody comes in and drops $10,000 on each of us. Okay.
Okay.
And we're going to use this. We're actually going to use the example here of a furniture store. Okay. So you and I walk into a furniture store. You're going to walk in and say, I want to buy that couch. Actually, I'm going to change it up. I'm going to walk in first. I'm going to ask the owner, okay, how much is that couch? He's going to say $1,000. I'm going to go, ooh, based on my evaluation of the couch market at the current time, I don't think that's a good deal. And I turn to walk out and he goes, oh, 500. And I go, okay, I'll buy it for 500. Okay. So I've made a determination on the market, the value of that. I've gone through and been a good consumer, right? So let's talk about the passive guy. Now, bear in mind, your passive investor, your S&P 500 fund manager here, he doesn't care about price.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't look at, you don't look, Rich Brown is not looking at the price of the couch at all. You've been told by your investor, I want to go in and buy furniture. You walk in and go, how much for that couch? And he goes, $1,000. And you go, okay. And he goes, no, $1,500. And you go, okay. And he goes, no, 2,000. And you go, okay. Because by definition, you must buy the couch. Think about that as NVIDIA stock. If somebody hands you money today as an S&P 500 fund manager, you have to spend 8.07% of that, invest 8.07% of that in NVIDIA stock. Doesn't matter what the price is. So there's no price discovery going on there. I could look at that and go, it's not worth 180 shares. I think it's worth 140. I'm not buying it. Mm-hmm. But somebody comes in the next day. Let's say NVIDIA goes to 190. Somebody goes in the next day. They go in on Tuesday and say, Rich, Mr. Passive Fund Manager, here's $10,000 that you're going to go put 8.07% of that into NVIDIA. Doesn't matter what the price is. Mm-hmm. Where else in life do we do this? Nowhere. This is passive investing. Now, it works as long as there's somebody coming in every day and adding money.
Yeah, like a Ponzi scheme.
Kind of like that, yeah. except it's not underhanded in any way, shape, or form. It's the way the system is built.
That's
Right.
right.
So as long as money is flowing in, it keeps going up. And there are people out there who will just say, you know what, I'm just going to buy the top 5 stocks in every index. As long as money keeps flowing in, they're guaranteed to keep going up. Doesn't matter what the fundamentals are. Doesn't matter what the economy's doing. Nothing else matters. Just buy those 5 to 10 stocks at the top of every index. And when everybody gets paid on every other Friday or whatever it is and puts money in their 401k, and they say put 20% of it into an S&P 500 fund, 8.07% of that 20% is going into NVIDIA. Which way is NVIDIA going? It's going up.
Yeah. Like
until people stop putting money in, or they become unemployed and stop putting money in, or even worse, start taking money out. Then it's going to be the other way. This is the danger of passive investing. So hashtag not financial advice. Okay. Keep buying the index until it stops working. And when it stops working, stop buying it real fast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we saw this. We saw this. We talked about this while you're off taking care of your stuff. We saw this in April. The smart money got out, but retail money kept pouring money into funds. And what happened? The market recovered very quickly because it's about the money flows. People aren't looking at valuations anymore. The S&P 500 goes up. S&P 500 fund goes up. So a passive guy like you say, I'll buy more of that. Well, that drives NVIDIA up. So I go, I'm going to buy some more NVIDIA. That drives NVIDIA up. That drives the whole index up, right? So you buy more. So I buy more. So you buy more. So I buy more, right?
Yeah.
So at what point does this get so out of whack that something changes? I don't know. But it's going to happen. And this is the threat to our stuff. And this is why 2 self-defense guys talk about this stuff. Because if suddenly your portfolio is down 50%, well, that's part of how you protect and defend your family, right?
That's right.
So that's why we talk about this stuff. In some ways where you might expect to be hearing about guns and self-defense and stuff like you and Dr. Fuller talked about with AI talking about self-defense. That was a great show.
Thank you, sir.
So this is there's one other thing. If you go back to the previous slide for just a second there, there's something else holding back the active investor. And by this, I mean, I should say the active fund manager. And it goes back to what you were talking about with the prospectus, which was a really good observation. If an active fund manager came to you, Rich, and said, you know what, I want to put 8% of your money all in one stock. Now, I know you pretty well, brother. You'd be like, really? Seriously?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But if you buy an S&P 500 fund, that's exactly what they're doing.
Exactly what you just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's on the passive side. On the active side, you dig in that prospectus, it might say you can only put 3% of the money in any given stock. Well, that's risk management, right? That also means you're going to have less downside when the market goes down. But this is also why active fund managers have not been able to beat the index.
Right.
Because 8% of the index is NVIDIA, but that active fund manager can only put 3% of the money in NVIDIA. By definition, they're not going to beat the index.
No.
They can't. Unless they go into something super risky somewhere else. And it's a really good way to get fired twice. Right? So the active fund managers have kind of been set up for failure. And also the active fund managers, I mean, humans like to get paid, right? So they're gonna get paid for all this research, AI or not. That research costs a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So the active fund managers are kind of set up for failure for people who want to grow their money to the maximum amount. So something to ponder on is as you hear people poo-pooing active fund managers, they're pretty much set up for failure.
Yeah, I don't think I would poo-poo them so much as it's, we all risk tolerance is a big example, so for me, it's like my risk tolerance is low. I'd rather miss out on 2 pennies to save a penny. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yep. And so you have to determine between discussions between you and your wife or you and your husband, like what do we want to accomplish here with our money? And which, you and I, to be as good friends as we are, we're totally opposite on so many things.
Yeah.
If I will do everything I can. I'll sell myself on the street to not do a DIY project.
Mm-hmm.
Easy, ladies. I know you're excited hearing about that. We're not there
Oh
yet.
my gosh, my phone just blew up. What's his number? What's his number? What's his wow?
Yeah, but I mean, so that's not something I enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to actively do this any more than I want to do brain surgery on myself. I'd rather set it and forget it. And I've never had a year where I was like, oh my God, Lisa, look at our returns. We're doing something wrong. Now, though, let me back up. There was some crashes that came along, obviously.
Sure.
2007, 2008, we got crushed just like everybody else did. You could go back even when I first started investing in the 90s, and the dot-com freaking cut my legs out from underneath me. But with those instances aside where everybody got hurt, I've been very pleased with the returns I've got as a passive investor. Now, have I missed out on some big, holy shit, Rich, you wouldn't believe what I did this year? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to take my hands off the wheel and not have to suffer the dopamine and rushes and, oh God, nah.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want.
And like you see, if we're great friends and we're totally opposite on this. And it's just a matter of risk tolerance. I mean, I hesitate to say this, and this is a gambling account I have, guys. Okay. I trade options in there. I'm up about 500% year to date in that account.
That's incredible.
Okay. But bear in mind, guys, this is less than 3% of my total net worth. Okay. I do this instead of going to the casino. Okay.
Yeah.
Because crowds annoy me to no end.
Well, and you're not going to make a 500% return in a casino, man, unless, they're going to write stories about you if you did.
Yeah. Well, they're probably going to take you out back and tune you up because you're counting cards. I've seen that documentary with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci.
Casino. Right.
Yeah. Which was, I think, based on a true story.
It was.
A segue. So this is something to keep in mind. So to your thing about when you got burned last time in 01. Now you can go to the next slide. It segued beautifully for that.
Oh, good.
So this is from the Kabisi letter on X. They're a good follow on there. So this is where we talk about market concentration, and you'll hear them talk about market concentration on CNBC or CNN Business, but the term you'll hear more often is market breadth, which is how wide is this move in stocks. There have been times since you and I started doing this together, brother, when 3 or 4 stocks or the Mag 7 held up the entire market. There was one year, I think it was 2021. Don't quote me on that. The Mag 7 accounted for like 95% of the move, the positive move in the market.
Holy cow.
So there were times in there where you had the S&P 7 was like 95% of the growth of the S&P 500. Now, let's be clear. That's an awesome thing. Because if you bought any of the other 493 stocks as an active investor, you lost money. Right? So this is where being passive, like you like to do, worked completely in your favor. Right? Until it doesn't. Okay. So right now you can see from this this graphic they put together, the top 10% largest U.S. stocks are 70% of the U.S. equity market. That's a lot of concentration. Okay. This officially surpasses the previous record set right before the Great Depression.
Yeah, good point.
Okay. And by comparison, the dot-com bubble, which you mentioned, the top 10% of stocks were 73% of the market. We're currently at 76%. That level of concentration will turn against this market at some point. So the point of today's show is be aware that it's not if, it's when. And man, when you can see when that goes down, you're falling off a cliff. Okay. So
now, can some people actively manage their way out of that and make money as it tumbles? That might be, whereas me, I'm just going along with all the other sheep right off the cliff.
So there's a few ways to do that. The easiest way, go to cash. And when I say cash, I don't mean bonds. I mean cash, money markets. And let's face it, a money market right now is paying 4%. And this is something that I think more people are getting on board with. It's referred to as T-bill and chill. So you buy a T-bill and you chill out. You can go buy a 2-year treasury bill and make 4% ish. Okay. Well, long term, you expect the stock market to return about 8%.
Yeah.
So during a time of market concentration like this, I can go buy a T-bill and get half the return, absolutely 100% guaranteed, with no volatility.
Yeah, that was my grandfather's strategy. I'm sitting in his home right now because it worked, that was basically the inheritance, T-bill and chill.
Well, and it's based on timing, right? Right now that works. For the last 20 years, it didn't work at all. And really since 2008, it didn't work at all.
Yeah.
Because your T-bill was paying a 10th.
Well, he died in 2010, so
right. So
from the depression on, that was kind of the strategy.
Well, and if the interest rate being paid on a T-bill is greater than the rate of inflation, you're making real money, right? Well, from the housing crisis until very recently when inflation took off and rates went up, it was just the opposite. You were losing money to inflation every year. You were losing purchasing power by sitting in T-bills.
Yep, that's a fact.
So timing matters. People are like, oh, you can't time the market. Well, you're right. You can't. You really can't. Okay. You can play the edges and play the game.
You can adjust to it, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You adjust to market conditions. And when the Fed makes interest rates zero, sitting in that, it reduces volatility in your overall portfolio, but you're losing purchasing power every year. And that's what happened from about 2009 until about 2021. So, yeah. So that's what so this market concentration, guys, you're going to see headlines about this at some point. I would not expect to see it this year. But whenever it starts to break, it's going to be bad. And you can pretty much match that last chart up with a stock chart during that time.
Yeah.
Okay. So active investing, we touched on some of these points already. The advantage is it will adjust. So if you have this is also where, so if you have a portfolio with an active manager, he or she may see these conditions coming and make some adjustments proactively. Well, that's tough because you have to go convince the humans who aren't making as much money as their neighbor in the market that this is prudent. It's tough. It's really tough to do. Okay. The hard part there is, let's say like let's say you go buy a tech fund. Okay. And it's labeled as a tech fund, not a NASDAQ fund. It's a tech fund. That active fund manager in there might be the best tech fund active manager in the world. But if tech as a sector goes down 20%, that person is not going to make you money that year.
Exactly.
Because they can't.
I don't care how amazing he is.
Okay. So that's something to keep in mind with any investing is it doesn't matter how good the fund manager is. If the market turns against you, you're just done.
No.
Okay. Now you can get into really active management where it's just like, you know what? We're just going to get out completely. And some of your certified financial planners can be fairly aggressive with that. If you're interviewing people, ask them what they did, back when. And I've asked them, show me your records. Obviously with nobody's names on there, and most of them won't. So
I like this point where you have up here about AI, Imagine your fund manager is AI.
And that's where we're going.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. And that's going to be, it's fraught with peril. But man, I tell you what, it doesn't have any emotions other than make money,
Absolutely. And that's the key to making money in the markets is zero emotion.
Yeah.
No fear, no greed. And that's the hardest part of it. Right. And I have used AI when I play in the options market. Construct an iron condor trade for NVIDIA that will return me at least this much within 2 weeks. And it constructs the entire trade for me. And I have not actively traded those yet, but I am paper trading those to see how they work. And so far, it's working really good.
Really good.
Yeah. Like retire early kind of good.
Oh,
yeah. So, some other advantages to active investing is risk management. They might look at that right now and go, you know what? we're going to pare you back a little bit. And that's where some good communication on both sides really helps, because the client has to understand that we're going to make less money than my neighbor or my brother-in-law or whoever. Okay.
Mm.
But you also have to temper your expectations. There's limits to how much they can manage risk, because things can happen that nobody can predict. Right. So this is also where the active fund manager really has a challenge, because most people just go, well, compared to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, you made 3/4 of that. Why am I paying you money? Right. There's, as an aside on this, like I've got some investments out there that, and you're going to shudder when I say this, they're actually designed. I hope they lose money. I hope they lose a lot of money, because they are, um, I bought options, call options on things that are triple short the market. SQQQ, it's triple short the market, triple short the NASDAQ, right?
Mm.
I bought call options on the SQQQ for way out of the money for the middle of next year. The only way that goes up in value is if the market tanks.
Mm.
So I hope that loses all. I hope it's down 100% next June when it expires. But it's an insurance policy, because if things go sideways, that'll go up 6, 7, 800% easy.
Yeah, I've always
So,
had a problem with that. That's why I did not vote for Mitt Romney and would never, could never. Because what he did with Bain Capital, that helped
mhm,
untold number of American companies move overseas
mhm.
and profit at the cost of the American. I mean, there's something. I get it. I hope you make enough money to that we're all flying on private jets, but I, j- I just have a problem with that kind of thing. It reminds me of what was the Big Short,
Mhm.
where they're in the casino and they're doing the dance because they know they just crushed it, right?
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt's character's like, don't do that. You know, every every percentage point is so many suicides and so many this
Mhm.
and that. It's just like, oof. That's
Yeah,
me.
but yeah, and I get that. And but bear in mind, what I'm really doing here is buying an insurance policy.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Right.
And I
So,
think that's the way I need to frame it so that I can get
mhm.
over my moral qualms with it. It's like, hey man, it's just an insurance against it,
Well, and the how do I put this? No, no amount of shorting the market. I mean, there were plenty of people shorted Tesla on the way up and lost a lot of money,
Yeah.
right? Elon famously found all that's public information, and the people who significantly shorted Tesla stock, he literally sent them pairs of red shorts. So they lost a lot of money on their shorts on Tesla,
Yes, they
right?
did.
But the thing is, it doesn't matter what you do or what I do. The market's going to do what the market's going to do.
Hmm.
So that insurance policy is a way that I protect and defend the family's portfolio.
That makes see, I needed to hear that.
So
I
you
can
know,
get on board with that. That makes sense.
so to put it in perspective, I'm math in public. I'm going to say it's 1/4% that I have in that
Hmm.
of the portfolio.
Okay.
So that goes up. It ends up being 5, 6, 7% of the portfolio. That'll offset the losses I take in other stuff if I wind up offsides and the market tanks. So,
Yeah.
um,
Hopefully the 10 folks watching us this morning, heard what you just said and can see that as
yeah.
a brilliant strategy.
Well, we'll see if it's brilliant. It could be stupid too.
So,
Time will tell. The bottom one here, I think, is the most important part. Risk management isn't about how much you make; it's how much you lose when you're wrong. That's risk management, right?
mm-hmm.
So, um, that's what an active fund manager, an active advisor will do. The disadvantage of using active stuff like that is the cost. Humans like to get paid when they put work in. Okay. And you are going to get, during good times when money is flowing into the market, you are going to underperform a cap weighted index for all the reasons we just talked about. As long as the money's flowing in, unless you are very, very good, and a little lucky too, you're not going to beat the cap weighted index very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And one way you can do that though is Instead of having the S&P 500 fund, you could do the Brown 9 and just buy the 9 individual stocks at the top of the S&P 500. You'll beat the S&P 500 fund every single time. You're also going to do worse on the way down.
It's called the Brown 9.
The Brown 9. Yeah, I made that up.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah. So, because that would be the complete opposite of what you would make you comfortable, right?
Exactly.
But if you buy the S&P 500, you're not too far away from the Brown 9, really, because 40% of your money's going in the 9.
Yeah, you're right.
It's just math.
Yeah,
just
math doesn't care. Hey, speaking of math, look at this.
Yeah, look at this go. Okay, so this is one. There's a lot of different ways to value stocks, guys. This is one way. The chart we're going to go to after this kind of cherry picks this. We're not going to belabor this very much. So this is how do you calculate price to book? Okay, this is for calculating this is one way to calculate a valuation of a stock. So the price to book ratio equals the market price per share, say NVIDIA 180 a share ish, divided by the book value per share. And I'm going to read this off down here. Book value per share is total assets minus intangible assets, which NVIDIA has a lot, minus total liabilities divided by number of shares outstanding. Okay. Don't worry about the math on this, guys. What I really want to get to is this is a valuation, a way to value a stock. Okay. So it's the share price divided by its book value. Okay. Go to the next one here, the chart. It's pretty high. So this is from Bank of America and Bloomberg. So not some nutcase thing. Goes back to 1946. This is done as a factor. So your price to book value of the S&P 500, this is all 500 stocks, is 5.3 times. So the price of the share is 5.3 times the book value, which was that formula we talked about. Just call it the value of it. Make it simple. Okay, guys. The point is, look how far out of whack we are. And back to your .com bubble comment from earlier, brother, we're at 5.1 back then. And this market,
we all remember what happened after that.
And this market today is more concentrated into those top few stocks than it was back then.
That's right.
So it's coming. When? I don't know. Something's going to have to happen. No matter how overvalued a market gets, whether it be real estate, and we can go back to Dr. Michael Burry and all that, right? Or whether it be the .com bubble, something has to happen. There has to be a catalyst of some sort. We don't know what that catalyst is.
Pretty big tremors there, don't we, Will? I mean, look, just a couple of years prior to where we are there, there's a pretty big fall.
Which years are you talking about there?
Man, I wish I had a pointer. I would show it to you. I'm trying to see what year.
Ish.
2023-ish, where it just kind of falls off that cliff there.
Yeah, that was when the market pulled back.
Yeah.
That was probably actually 2022 when it pulled back.
Yeah.
When
it was like a free fall.
Yep. So and you can also have times when you just grind sideways. Look from 57 to 70. It just kind of grinds sideways there. Okay. But the point is, when this gets way out of whack, it is going to correct back. When? Got to have a catalyst.
Yep.
There has to be some form of catalyst. I mean, unless something happens with a trade war or something like that, I don't see it on the imminent horizon. But, that's the definition of a black swan event as well, right? Yep. You don't see it coming. So I'm not running off and, selling everything off or anything like that. But this type of market concentration, then a catalyst is what triggers big downturns. If we take a time, like say, pick, I don't know, look at like about where 2015 would be. It climbed up quite a bit, right? But it isn't way out of whack. So when a catalyst happens, the reaction to the catalyst is not going to be as great as if the market's already way out of whack. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Well, right now we're way overvalued. So a catalyst is going to have an outsized effect on this market. When? I don't know. The old magic 8 ball is a little fuzzy. It says the future is uncertain.
Well, there's so many unique threats on the horizon. Those are the ones we can see, and then there's
Right.
all the ones that you and I can't see.
Yep. So my point of bringing this chart into the show is to show you guys that the market is way overvalued, out of whack, and concentrated. So when that catalyst occurs, the resulting effect on the market is going to be just as outsized as that run up. Look at the dot-com bubble.
Yeah.
And you look at each one of these, the one you brought up in 2022, look how it shot up in 2020, 2021-ish.
Yeah.
And then the pullback.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the bigger picture leading up to the dot-com bubble, same thing on the way back down.
So we're in uncharted territory with the outsized.
Literally, yes.
Yeah. I mean, 5.3.
Yeah, I mean, this chart goes back to 45, 46.
Yeah.
And I mean, .com, oh my gosh, pets.com, it's worse now.
I know.
Right? So, some sort of shock happens to this market. Yeah, it's going to have a big effect. So, on a personal note, this last weekend, we had a great life event. That is my son dancing with his new bride. Their first dance together as husband and wife, as my wife and I look on. One of my wife's friends got that picture. This is an awesome picture. It's on the wall already downstairs here. So congratulations to Spencer and Rachel. And may their
You did it right, brother.
Oh man, they're great kids, and their future is very bright. They're both very hardworking and good people and love each other. And we couldn't be happier to add her to the family officially at this point. And just great people, great couple, and very excited for them.
Look, please tell Spencer congrats again from Lisa and I.
I shall.
And his new bride.
Yes. So,
and with that, my friend, I got the contractor blowing me up again.
Okay.
Will, when you're ready, sir, you may take us out, please.
I guess the fight's coming. Be ready.